Last time we learned that whales, birds, cats, and a range of other mammals contain dead genes. Once active, now turned off by mutations. Do these genes represent some wondrous, divine secret, lovingly written into our bodies by... insert favorite deity here? Unlikely for several reasons, not the least of which is the fact that, in the case of chickens and the aforementioned vitellogenin genes, we already know what they do. We see these genes working now in living chickens and living monotremes. But we can go deeper. Some popularists of evolution give the warning that audiences are reluctant to believe evidence of evolution concerning humans. So I've included other examples from the animal kingdom, but rest assured we'll be moving out of Eden in due time. Yes, YouTubers, we're back to whales again. These heavily modified mammals have much to teach us. We've learned in part 1 that odontocetes, toothed whales, possess hundreds of deactivated genes for smelling airborne odors, even though they live in water for some strange reason. And dolphins have no sense of smell at all, also indicated by a lack of olfactory lobes in their brain, even though an intelligent designer could have given them water receptors such as those found in fish. But no. Nonetheless, we have a lot yet to learn about this clade of animals. When I was young and impressionable, my creationist family taught us all from pseudoscience articles attempting to discredit evolution based on a God of the Gaps claim that the Mysticetes, baleen whales, could not have evolved because there would be no intermediate stage between teeth and baleen that would be favored by natural selection. So of course that must mean God did it. Arguments like these have become a new form of dogma for creation believers. But in this case, the gap had already been filled by real scientists long ago. No, and not this gap. Enter Adiocetus, a suspiciously familiar creature. Adiocetus lived in the sea, and frolicked in the North Pacific in an epoch called the Oligocene. Resist urge to make a Puff the Magic Dragon joke. This species, over 30 million years ago, left a fossil record giving us a further glimpse into the storied history of whales. We can see from the fossil evidence that these creatures had both teeth and baleen at the same time. So, fair warning. If your God concept is dependent on whale evolution not working, then the news only gets worse from here. But what if, as intelligent design hopefuls have argued to me, the clear fossil record simply describes an unrelated sequence of similar creatures with no connection to each other beyond an alleged common designer? Well, that's what science is for. If, as evolution predicts, all whales evolved from a toothy land predator that lived 50 million years ago, they should have vestiges of a land-bound origin. And indeed, that is what we saw in the previous video. This is reflected in a broken airborne sense of smell. But what about baleen whales? Alternatively, if the beliefs of people in earlier eras were true, and if all animals were poofed into being in their present forms by an intelligent designer more recently than the age of the oldest bristlecone pine trees, why then has genetic analysis revealed broken genes in baleen whales for mineralized teeth? Sure enough, baleen whales have dead genes for tooth enamel that is not expressed. For teeth they don't have. Filter feeders, remember? No chewing involved. They have no teeth, yet somehow researchers have found the enamellysin gene, an essential precursor for the teeth mineralization process in all mammals. It is deactivated in all baleen whales, representing a defining trait of their lineage. This gene, enamellysin, is responsible for the correct processing of 3 other tooth formation genes. Not convinced? Here's more. Throughout this series I've harped on the whale's sense of smell, which in addition to the teeth baleen conversion, agrees with predictions on when cetaceans adopted a completely aquatic lifestyle. Well, it turns out that the loss of the odontocete's sense of smell, calculated by rates of genetic change, also agrees with paleontology. And in science, multiple lines of evidence in agreement is essentially a done deal. There are other possibilities. I could go on to discuss the consequences these findings on enamel loss have for the ancestry of mammals like sloths and anteaters. Hint, we can trace their ancestry too. But it's time to discuss matters close to home. Humanity. Copious research on our own species provides us with information with substantial implications concerning human nature. Let's take an intimate look. Add more pseudogenes. Let's take a journey to human chromosome 8, where we can find instructions for a complex synthetic pathway that remains broken and buried. Any child coerced by their parents to eat vegetables and fruits against their will must regret the loss of this gene. The gluconolactone oxidase enzyme is responsible for the final step of the biosynthetic cascade to make ascorbic acid, otherwise known as vitamin C. And without this enzyme, normally abbreviated as gulo, we are left with the scourge of the ancient mariner, scurvy. All great apes, and guinea pigs as it turns out, lack this function. But sure enough, we still have the gene. The dead gene for the last step in making our own vitamin C, like all carnivores possess. But not for us. The crowning achievement of Yahweh's creation has a broken copy, as this research concludes. Since all Old World primates, including great apes, share this deficiency, evolution predicts that the loss of function must have occurred nearly 50 million years ago. How would creation science attempt to explain this data? One more item to hammer the point home. The gulo gene is shared by many other primates and guinea pigs, but it's important to discuss a feature unique to Homo sapiens alone. A heavy chain muscle protein gene designated as MYH16. It gives gorillas and chimps comparatively enhanced jaw muscles for a much stronger bite force compared with humans. Useful for a diet heavy in rough plant matter. Less useful when you are cooking meat. From fossils, we can verify that early hominids possessed active versions of this gene, and of course, humans have it too, but in our case, let me hear you say it, it's broken. Deactivated by a frameshift mutation roughly 2.4 million years ago. Still there. Scientists can trace when MYH16 was turned off based on mutation rates. And guess what? Once again, there's a correlation between when these gene deactivations occurred and when changes happened in the fossil record. So is that it? Is it really that simple? Surely there's more to learn about pseudogenes. They may have effects and consequences still to be uncovered, but are they part of an intelligent design? Perhaps. If the intelligent designer has a fondness for polycystic kidney disease and a bone deformity known as osteogenesis imperfecta. Now, I'm not an engineer, but that does not sound like a well-reasoned blueprint. In the case of MYH16, we really don't want it reactivated. If this gene were turned back on, it would most likely reduce us back to being apes by preventing the growth of the human brain to the modern proportions that we enjoy today. Despite everything, I don't doubt that the malleability of religion would allow someone out there to invent a superstitious rationale for why a loving God would program us with leftover instructions for biological functions we no longer use. But while a magical explanation could be dreamed up for almost any circumstances, real scientists will continue to use evolution because it makes sense out of this data. There is no confusion over the fact that all mammals have dead egg yolk genes, or why apes can't make vitamin C, because these functions were useful for our ancestors many millions of years ago, and were deactivated when selective pressures favoring these traits eased. Resorting to supernatural magic to explain nature will never give us the explanatory and predictive power that evolution does. There is still grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, and that, whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved.